Welcome to the Butter Notes podcast with three guys who have no business listening to music, much less talking about it. All right, we're coming back after a long hiatus for Raw Beef number 8. Another slab of raw beef, as we put it in one of the many, many episodes that I recently edited.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
The first time we're going to talk about is really boring and long, and there's no singing.
There's no singing on it.
Yeah, there's no singing. I mean, I don't really get why anybody would listen to this, but
Let's talk about it anyway.
but Tone insisted.
We're going to talk about this really shitty album.
You want to lay into her, Tone?
Okay, hard shift into being serious. This is the Survivor Suite by Keith Jarrett from 1977. Just like a quick breakdown of Keith Jarrett's catalog because it's really huge and can be intimidating. His career starts in the late 60s with the quartet isn't like totally solidified in the late 60s, but it gets solidified in the early 70s. It called his American Quartet, which was Keith, who's mainly a pianist, even though he's a multi-instrumentalist, and he does play some other instruments on this album. But he's mainly a pianist. So it's Keith Jarrett, and then Charlie Hayden on bass, Dewey Redman on tenor sax, and Paul Modian on drums. That's the American Quartet who's playing on here, and that's who he played with for most of the 70s. Then he had another quartet in the 70s, the European Quartet, which was with Jan Garbarek on sax, John Christensen on drums, and Palle Danielson on bass. That was his other quartet in the 70s. And then he did solo. He does a lot of solo piano improvisation. And then in the 80s, both of those quartets dissolved, and he formed a trio with Gary Peacock and on bass and Jack DeJohnette on drums. They mostly played standards, although they also played some original stuff from Keith. And he played with that trio like from the 80s, 90s, all the way through the 2000s. He had a stroke in 2018, so he unfortunately can't really play anymore. And then he also has done some classical albums. He's like a classical composer as well. So that's also scattered throughout the discography. So that's kind of how it breaks down. And this album from 1977 is really like generally considered the peak of the American Quartet, and for good reason.
Yeah, this was phenomenal. Just to get it out there right off the bat, this was phenomenal.
Seconded on that for sure. Now you said he's a multi-instrumentalist. What other instruments does he play on this record?
On this record, he plays mainly he's the first like 5, 6, 7 minutes of side one. That like tribal section, he's playing the liner notes on the LP say it's a bass recorder. It kind of sounds like a flute, but I think it's a bass recorder. And he's also playing percussion too during that section. So is Dewey. Like him and Dewey are playing percussion, and Keith is playing like a bass recorder. And then the bass eventually comes in, and like when fucking Charlie Hayden comes in with that bass riff about 4 or 5 minutes in, that is just like one of my favorite builds in all of music is the first like 5 or 6 minutes of this album. And then like when that bass riff comes in, and then eventually Paul comes in on the drum kit, it's just like what a fucking build.
Yeah, and then when the piano finally comes in around 10 minutes, it blew me away.
Yeah, it's
absolutely blew me away.
This album is like, it's one of my all-time favorites. It's like, even calling, like, it's a jazz record, obviously. It's like an avant-garde jazz record. I definitely also think people don't really describe this album as third stream, but I definitely think it does have some third stream elements because it is very it's a suite, and there are movements, and it's sort of symphonic in that way, even though it's just a quartet playing.
Excuse my my plebitude here, but can I get a quick rundown on Third Stream?
Oh, Third Stream is like a Sketches of Spain by Miles equals Third Stream. It's like
love Sketches of Spain.
It's like a kind of a simplistic way to define it, just like a hybrid of classical and jazz.
Yep, I definitely hear that on this. I love the I think something that I found to be really, like, I guess my favorite part on the first side, I think there's a shift around, I think we mentioned around 8 minutes, and then there's another one around 13 minutes. And right near the end, Keith is playing these piano accompaniments, right? I think there's just like the bass is kind of playing, and he's got these piano accompaniments, and it is like the most, I don't know, prolific kind of addition of like texture to music that I've ever heard. Like the appreciation towards that, and just knowing like him having a sense of kind of when to let the other instruments do the talking, and him just kind of come in and accent them and complement them. I don't know of many other artists who do it as well. Chick Corea is really good at doing that as well. But yeah, I think they're certainly in their own tier when it comes to doing that. That was one of the biggest things I appreciated about the first side. He just has kind of a sense of like space and when he can enter into the conversation, so to speak.
Yeah, these four dudes are just like an absolute synchronicity with each other on this. Like this is a jazz quartet. This is as good as it gets with a jazz quartet playing together. Like they are a unit on this.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're like, it's like almost spiritual, and I'm sure Keith would probably consider it spiritual because he's like a really spiritual guy. But it's like almost spiritual in the sense that like you don't really detect any ego on this album. Like they're playing when it's right for the music, and like that's really what you want from like a jazz band at their height, is when they're like totally like just conversing with each other instrumentally in a way that doesn't involve like trying to show off. And that's this. And there are moments of like insane virtuosity on this thing, like with Keith, like when Keith comes in with the piano after that long kind of tribal build, when he comes in with the piano, he's kind of just playing simple chords, and then it like builds, and then he like rips that solo around halfway through, maybe a little over halfway through side one. That it is just like a flurry of fucking notes on that piano. Like I don't even know what he's doing. It's like insane. And like the band and Keith as a pianist, like they earn that with building the tension and building the texture. If you just like start like just jerking off on the piano, like that might be kind of interesting, but that's not what makes like truly amazing like jazz music. They earn any time where they really like let it rip on this album, they earn it. And that's something that I've like, especially in recent years, have come to really look for and appreciate.
Well, that's sort of a benchmark for jazz past a certain point, I think. So, you know, jazz starts off sort of as a way of playing standards, right? And then that morphs into bebop, which is an extreme way of playing standards, where it's all about the improv. It's all about the solos over the changes.
Yeah, Charlie Parker.
And then, yeah, exactly. And then kind of from out of that, with guys like Miles, we get a kind of jazz where we still care about the changes, we still care about the way the musicians play together, but it's not so much about cramming solos in as it is about creating space and having the musicians communicate amongst themselves, basically through the instruments. So the guys have to listen, and it's a lot of call and response, and knowing when one guy needs to have the floor because he's on some tangent that's worth giving him the space for.
It reminds me of, I'd read something about As Wichita Falls, which is another ECM album that Metheny was playing, I think, and near the end of, I can't remember which song. Maybe it was the opener. Or no, it may have been, what was the track you sent? So I always forget the names of tracks when I start talking about them. James, you sent us a track. That guy was talking about one of the tracks on As Wichita Falls. Apparently, I'd read in there that... go ahead, sorry.
September 15th. Rick Beato did
September,
a video on that a little while ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think the piano part that Lyle Mays is playing, the song was starting to wind down or something, and Lyle started playing this extra piece right at the end there, and Pat was just like playing him along, like trying to get him to continue doing it, and that part almost didn't happen or something like that. So that's just to like bolster your point there about just knowing when to let the other person take over and just express, I don't know, give their part of the expression of the music. It's also my understanding this album was written originally as like a live piece that was supposed to be played in some music hall, and it was only like going to be like a one-time thing, maybe like 2 shows or something like that. And maybe I'm retroactively looking at it this way, but one of. I mean, you mentioned it. I think it's there's something spiritual about this record. I certainly felt that, but I also think it was very intimate and personal. And I didn't know if maybe that's communicating from the fact that it was written for maybe a smaller audience, or initially or intended to be written for a smaller audience or something like that. But it's almost as if like it's me and the music, and the music's communicating to me when I listen to it. It's it's not, there's not a lot of bombast to it. It's just very, it just feels very personal when I'm listening to it. It's got a nice warm feeling to it, at least especially on the first side. The second side, it kind of it opens up, but at least on this first side, yeah, it's very tender, I would say.
The second side is so fucking good. Like the first 5 minutes of this, they go in like immediately on side 2. Like that is full blown free jazz there, and then it's sort of like, and then they calm down, and then in like the last 5 minutes of this record, the last 5 minutes of this album is like some of my favorite music of all time. Like that is like a cinematic conclusion, like as good as it gets. Like that gets me every time. Like when I'm listening to this, especially when the last 5 minutes start, like I have to like stop what I'm doing and like make sure that I'm doing nothing but listening to the music. It can't be ignored. And Dewey Redman, like in the conclusion, like I mean, he shreds on the tenor sax this whole album, but especially like in the last 5 or 6 minutes. God damn.
Yeah, I was absolutely engrossed by this album. I mean, I try to do this as much as possible, but sometimes I listen to music while I'm doing other things. It's convenient to do. But I had the fortune to sit down and just kind of listen to this. I didn't feel like I needed to be doing anything else. I was just completely engrossed by the music, occupied by it. It just kept my attention through the whole thing and didn't let me look away from it, I guess.
Yeah, it sucks you in, man. I mean, so we're sitting here looking at the album cover for this, and you can just sort of imagine it looks like this late summer day kind of setting, and I can imagine myself with that music playing, just sitting by this pool and getting lost in it.
Yeah, it's an album that is like really hard to exhaust. Like you're gonna find new stuff in this album every time you listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
With all that space, I mean, you're guaranteed
so
to
many
find
layers,
new
texture,
stuff,
and yeah, absolutely.
And Charlie Hayden on the bass, like Hayden was already like a extremely established bassist before he even got started playing with Keith in the 60s. Like he made his bones with Ornette Coleman. Shape of Jazz to Come, he's the bassist on that, and that's a pretty seminal album from the late 50s. And if I don't want to have to pick a favorite performance of these 4 dudes on this album, but I think I would probably have to pick Charlie Hayden if I had to. Some of the bass solos on this album, especially like at the very end of side 1, is like some of my favorite double bass playing I've ever heard.
I definitely picked up on that on the second listen. I was much more interested in what the bass was doing. I think in the first listen, the thing that stuck out to me most was Dewey's saxophone playing. He's an absolute star in the first part of the second side, and then right in the middle there of the first side, and then just the kind of I guess, I don't know, unity in playing with Keith, as I mentioned, with the accompaniments was definitely the first thing I noticed. And then the second time was definitely the bass, and then the third time I decided to pay attention to the drums. And I have to say, yeah, you just said his name, I forget his name already, but the drummer absolutely goes ham on the first part of the second side. Some of the craziest drumming I've ever heard.
Yeah, Paul Madian. Paul Madian is primarily a free jazz, avant-garde jazz drummer. Like that's his wheelhouse. Like all of his solo material is like full-blown avant-garde jazz. Not all of it, but probably most of it. And like so that's Paul Madian really gets to flex when they do the free jazz at the beginning of side 2.
He was definitely comfortable doing that. I could tell. It was his time to shine.
That's when he's really in his element.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is, I guess, starting to be a gateway into the other ECM stuff. So I listened. Forgive me if I mispronounce the name. Eberhard, is it Weber or Weber? I don't know if it's the German pronunciation or not, but Eberhard Weber. The Colors of Chloe, I think, is another excellent ECM. So now I just got to go through the back catalog because you've given us 2 ECM records, and both of them I think are masterpieces, and I found a third one too. So I'm definitely gonna run through this stuff.
Tereha Ripdahl is a really cool Norwegian guitarist, jazz guitarist. All of his stuff is on ECM. Really creative and spacey jazz guitarist that I recommend as well. ECM
I listened
stuff,
to one of his records too. I can't remember the name of it though.
Was it Waves? That's the
It was
famous
Waves.
one. Yeah,
it was Waves. Yes.
yeah. ECM stuff they've released like a pretty wide variety of jazz and classical, but like if there's a through line for ECM stuff, it's like kind of minimal and definitely a lot of space. Almost sometimes semi-ambient takes on jazz music is really the through line for ECM stuff, and just like a big focus on texture and like top-notch recording. Definitely like Manfred Eicher, who's the executive producer and owner of ECM, like is like a amazing producer. Any ECM record is like guaranteed to sound amazing, which for jazz and classical is what you want.
For sure.
And you can rely on that for any ECM release.
Well, it's interesting you say that about the sort of spaciness and atmosphere of it. I think the first, I guess, must have been the first ECM record I'd ever heard without knowing it was Tigran Hamasyan's Atmospheres. I think it's the only Tigran Hamasyan record that released on ECM, but that one's much more subdued compared to his other releases. Very spacey and, as the name would imply, very atmospheric. Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me now having heard this stuff that he would have released it on ECM.
I'm not familiar with him. Is he a guitarist?
Oh, dude, he rips. Now he's a
Tigran
pianist.
Hamasyan? Oh, he's pianist, yeah, from Armenia.
Yeah,
excellent.
He rips, man.
So good, yeah. He's done a song with Morgan Ogren recently. I guess last year he released it.
Yeah, I heard that.
He's done
awesome.
crossovers with Tosin Abasi. I did his music. He has like the Armenian folk influence is obviously there, the jazz is obviously there, the classical's obviously there, and there's even some metal that kind of goes on through his music. He's just such a versatile pianist. I definitely, highly recommend his stuff.
And he has an album on ECM. Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
At least one. I think it might be the only one. Weirdly enough, I think all of them are on a different label. All the other ones.
Yeah, Keith. Ever since the late 70s, has released on no other label. There are some a couple of the albums from the 70s are on Blue Note, but definitely there is some chemistry between him and Manfred Eicher, because like it's the only label that he ever put any music out on after a certain period. What you laughing at, Jim?
I'm cracking up at Jacob blowing fucking clouds, man.
I'm a fiend.
That's meth, right? It's meth.
PCP.
PCP.
Yeah.
We're on meth, which is why we like
The hard stuff.
We only like all
nothing
this.
says-
We only like all this weird music because we're on hard drugs.
Yeah, nothing like meth and ambient jazz music.
Yep.
God, you're so right. Had either of you ever heard any Keith Jarrett before?
No.
So I was gonna mention this. He was on. He played with Miles in the '60s, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that would have been the only context in which I would have heard him before. I hadn't heard any of his solo stuff.
Yeah, Live Evil. He plays the organ on Live Evil and definitely rips some real solos. He totally gave up all electronic instruments pretty early in his career. He has a couple kind of one-off albums where he played electric guitar in his home studio, but other than a couple of things like that, nothing but acoustic instruments on any Keith Jarrett release. So it's interesting to listen to him on Live Evil playing the organ.
That is very interesting. Did he say why? Is that an aesthetic thing?
He took a really hard stance on it in the 70s, I think, which was kind of him being a little bit contrarian, kind of opposing the jazz fusion that was really the jazz rock and jazz fusion that was really popular at that time. I think he said something he made some oblique comment in liner notes, which is kind of how just sort of makes sense based on how he is. The quote was, to paraphrase, electricity runs through all of us. There's no need to plug it into a wall or something. And that was his explanation for why he only wants to play an acoustic piano.
Incredibly based.
Oh man,
It is kind of based.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Even if I don't agree, I don't know. It sounds really cool.
Yeah, I don't agree, but that's okay.
I do think that like imposing restrictions on yourself as an artist can be very useful.
Sure.
So I agree in that
yeah.
regard.
Yeah, sure.
Or you get excessive albums like, should I say it? I don't know if I should. We're not doing call outs anymore, are we? There's a specific album that's very excessive that we've been talking about recently. Yeah, point is, the good to place restraints on yourself, or you can get into some.
That's
excess.
I know the one, Altered State by Tesseract, right? That's the one.
Pretty excessive, yes,
Yeah.
that one.
That's
for
one
sure.
of the worst albums I've ever heard. I would take any Abrion album
God.
any day over that.
Damn.
It's pretty bad. It's not as bad as Joe's Garage, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, Transitus basically accomplished what
All right, elephant in the room.
what Tesseract was after.
I think I would rather listen to literally any other music than Tesseract.
Oh, I love that shit, though.
But digressing back to meth, let's talk about this Annihilator album.
Oh, boy.
A hard pivot, which is what we want in these raw beefs.
A terribly hard pivot.
I listened to this album 5 times.
I can't believe you listened to this.
This is
5
the one
times.
I spent the most time on.
It's been like 4 days
Yeah.
since we decided to do this.
Yeah, I know. I was just trying to figure out if I liked it or not.
Not that it's not great. I actually love this album.
It's not bad.
Yeah, so Annihilator, this is their debut. This album, Alice in Hell, came out in 1989. 88 or 89, I don't remember. And I'm not going to look it up, even though I'm sitting here at this computer.
The Butternotes podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Don't watch
yeah.
the Better Notes.
Leave it. The fans can look it up while they're driving and listening to this or something.
Don't text and drive, kids.
Don't drive and listen to shitty podcast, kids.
Yeah.
So this is one of the speediest thrash metal albums I think I've ever heard. Like, these guys are just they're moving way faster than Metallica. They're moving way faster than Megadeth. They're moving way faster than Anthrax. They're probably not moving way faster than Slayer, but like these dudes are just ripping for a full 45 minutes on this
They're
record.
having a good ass time on this thing.
Oh fuck yeah, they are. And another thing I love about it is the clean guitar interludes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the first
So
track.
like that first track is awesome, man. Tons of space. Very like it sounds like a classical guitar performance, even though it's I'm pretty sure it's played on an electric.
Yeah, that first track threw me for a loop because I was kind of expecting this album to be like balls to the wall, like kind of dumb but fun thrash metal, which it kind of is, but it was more like, it's not a progressive metal album by any means, but it was more progressive than I was expecting it to be.
I think isn't this like technical thrash, as they call it, tech thrash, or it gets lumped into that?
Yeah, I was approaching that. It was approaching technical thrash. I wouldn't call it technical thrash. I think it's more fun than most technical thrash.
Yeah,
But it was
I think it's
closer
just-
to that than I was expecting.
the noodly riffs is what made me think of that. Although something I wish they had done for the entire album, not that okay, so the vocalist is very dynamic, like, but I think he peaks on the Alice in Hell track where he's doing those eagle screeches. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I wish they would have done more of that. He kind of toned it down as the album went on, I thought, and I thought he was a really like one of the strongest parts of this group. And I thought they drowned him out a little bit as the album went on. So that was something I was looking for. But yeah, the vocals on the first track are excellent.
On Alice in Hell, the
Alice in
title
Hell,
track.
the first full track, yeah. Yeah, I wish they'd done more of that. The band I hear the most in this is Megadeth, though. I even to the point of I thought maybe ripping them off at a few points. So the song WTYD has the same, like the intro riff is almost the exact same. So it was really funny. I thought that Crystal Ann reminded me almost of Last Rites, like the way they did that kind of like soft intro into the album on "Killing Is My Business." and then the first the riff on "Killing Is My Business" or yeah, "Killing Is Our Business" is like almost the exact same as WTYD. It's like almost the exact same riff.
I'll have to do a side by side. I believe you, though.
I had to do that also.
Yeah, they're very, very similar, and I know, yeah, obviously the Megadeth album came out first. There's no way these guys didn't listen to them and weren't inspired by them. I'm not saying that's a problem. I'm not shit-talking. I just mean that the influence is very, very obvious to me. That was the band I heard most.
Yeah, I mean, thrash is already pretty big by the time this comes out in 88 or 89, which, again, I don't remember. Yeah. So, you know, these guys have got to have already been listening to what was going on with thrash metal, especially as it evolved in the mid-'80s. But they were actually a pretty big player in this sort of Canadian thrash scene with Voivod would be another band that would fall in there. There's another one that's escaping me.
Are Annihilator from Quebec?
I don't think it was Quebec.
I think they're from Toronto. I think is what it said.
Yeah.
Because Quebec metal bands are definitely tend to go on the technical side of things, as a rule.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now.
I saw that 4 stars on Epicon by Wild Run. Philistine take.
You talking to me?
Yeah, I just saw it pop up on your
Jake,
screen.
I don't just rate every new album a 5 out of 5.
I don't either.
So you're not based, Jim?
No, I rate everything a 0.5 out of 5 until I like.
And then you work your way up.
Yeah, I work my way up.
It's based methodological pessimism.
All music is a 0.5 at first.
Until it proves me wrong. Impress me.
Exactly.
No, what you do is you, before you begin listening to it, you rate it a 0.5. And then it has to earn getting anything higher after you actually
What is
listen
the
to
point?
it.
Why not just a 0? Oh, because you can't go. Yeah, you can't rate something as a 0 on Rate Your Music, can you?
No, you cannot.
Yeah, makes sense.
Annihilator is from Ottawa, capital of Canada.
Nice.
And this did come out in 89.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, so I apologize for those fans who crashed into a lake while they were trying to look up what year Alice in Hell by
I think you said 89 when you introduced the album. I'm pretty sure.
I did. I said it was either 89 or 88, and I couldn't remember.
Oh, yeah. I know it was 89.
Should have gone with my gut.
I listened to this thing 5 times. I should know. Yeah.
So, I think Jake had some kind of like historiography of this album that he wanted to share with us.
I wouldn't call it that. I don't want to exaggerate the claim that I made. It wasn't anything profound. I just, no, I said I saw this as a middle point. I said ideal middle point. That was probably, I was probably exaggerating a bit there. I saw a blend, and this is probably just because I listened to Eaten Back to Life the other day, yesterday, I guess. I guess
I'm just laughing at the name.
Based.
Eaten Back to Life.
So
Gotta
messed
love
up.
that shit.
So based.
Love it.
God, I love Cannibal Corpse.
I guess I just saw them. This album is them trying to take thrash in a much heavier and faster direction, and the vocals are much harsher than what I was normally used to in Metallica or something like that. And I just saw it as a more like approaching that side. It's obviously not as extreme or disgusting or whatever, but just like the extreme tempos throughout the entire thing. There's just no break really. There's a couple parts, those clean parts where it slows down, but you're just not getting much of that. I just thought this stuff was much faster and heavier than a lot of the like big 4 thrash stuff, except the exception of maybe Slayer.
Yeah, I mean, this is very much more in the vein of a Slayer than a Metallica or a Megadeth or even an Anthrax. Like, it's balls to the wall tempo through the whole thing.
But some of the vocal parts are pretty evil and mean sounding at certain points, I thought.
I don't know.
I just thought they were pushing...
I wouldn't think it much more evil than Tom Araya. I don't know.
I disagree, actually. I don't think this album was very evil at all. I thought it was more like sort of like cerebral than it was evil.
I don't know the lyrics. That's hard for me to say. Do you just mean from like the music itself you deduce that it's more cerebral?
The music itself, yeah. Like,
oh, okay.
If you listen to like, it's not evil in the way that like early brutal death metal like Cannibal Corpse is evil, and it's not evil in the way that it's not evil the way that like Rain and Blood is evil, and it's not evil in the way that like black metal is evil. It's kind of cerebral in the way that like And Justice for All was cerebral. It was like more in the vein of like And Justice for All or like the more technical tracks on Rest in Peace. Like, that's kind of what this was for me. And I wouldn't describe that stuff as evil sounding.
Yeah, the only thing I'm wondering now is I actually don't really know what the lyrical content on this album is. I should probably have looked that up since I'm the one that made us all listen to this. But
the Butternotes podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Just look up the lyrics while you're driving.
Yeah, just look it up while you're driving.
You signed a waiver before you started listening, so you can't sue if you get in an accident.
Yeah, that's a problem of mine in general. I rarely look up lyrics when I listen to stuff.
Well, I just don't like music where they're singing in the first place, so I don't like there to be any lyrics at all, for the most part.
See, I'm the opposite. I don't like instrumental music. It's just
so boring.
So boring.
Yeah, it's instrumental.
Boring.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I don't like music with vocals in it or lyrics. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
The lyrics just kind of seemed like I didn't do a read through of the lyrics. And yes, Jacob is boring. I didn't do a read through of the lyrics, but they seemed mainly just slightly kind of horror movie, asylum imagery and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's what I got out of it. I'm thinking about the lyrics on
Schizos Are Never Alone.
Mm-hmm.
Also that one.
I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking something different when I say evil. It's a very humanly evil more than I don't know. I think of Cannibal Corpse. I think of a monster, something that's
Cannibal
not
Corpse
human
is
anymore.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Cannibal Corpse is disgusting. When I think of evil, I think of Altars of Madness.
Yes.
Altars of Madness or De Mysterious Dum Sum Thanos. That's evil metal, and that's not evil. This album.
No, this is campier. It's more fun.
Well, yeah, when you recommended this, I thought it was going to be in the vein of Invasion of Your Privacy. That's what I was expecting.
Me too.
Just from looking at the album, it was like an 80s album, and I don't know, you recommended it, so I assumed it would just be some, glam metal or something like that.
Wow.
Jim recommended
implying I don't have a lengthy, diverse appreciation for music. Particularly 80s metal music.
Jim recommended it, so Jake pretty much thought it was going to just be pretty shitty. That's what he just said. I'll translate for you.
Or NPR core. It's one of the two. It's one of the two always.
Yeah, it's either 80s...
Oh, fuck. This is going to drag down my aggregate number, isn't it?
No, this actually went up. This is bolded.
I went up? Oh,
bit.
Fuck, I went up.
This is a bolded album on Rate Your Music.
What does that mean?
It means basically there's an algorithm for it that's not publicized or else people would manipulate it, but it's basically a combination of a certain number of ratings at a certain high amount of ratings. An album will get bolded. Basically means that it's highly rated.
It's 3.7, I think, right? It was up there.
Yeah, and it should be. Yeah. I feel like I haven't really been all that enthusiastic, and now I've been talking about this, but I really liked this. I thought this was an awesome album.
It's quite solid.
I do too. I think it's top-notch thrash, man. I like this a lot better than a decent amount of the more famous big-name thrash stuff.
I would honestly listen to this more than I'd listen to Metallica.
Yeah, me too. That's what I was going to say without saying
I would take Metallica over this, but I would definitely take this over Anthrax. I would take this over most Megadeth. I wouldn't take it over peak Megadeth, but I'd take it over a lot of Megadeth.
Early Megadeth, no chance. That's the best thrash stuff in my opinion.
Peak Megadeth is peak thrash.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much indisputable.
It depends on the Metallica album for me. Ride the Lightning, I'd rather listen to that than this probably, but
Cliff Burton Metallica I definitely think is peak thrash.
Yes. Ooh.
That's not that controversial.
Yeah, it's not.
Rain and Blood 2 is also awesome, obviously.
It is.
Yeah. No, solid ass album. Like I said, the only thing I wish is that the vocalist did some crazier shit. Like in the Alice in Hell. Those eagle screeches were cool as fuck.
They were cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I sort of thought this would be more of an 80s heavy metal album than it was. It's it is kind of that, but not as much as I thought it would be.
Well, I got plenty more of that, so I'll keep that in mind for future raw beefs.
Yeah.
For future slabs of beef. Shall we move on?
How did you first listen to this thing?
Some listicle I found when I made my spreadsheet.
Like a metal listicle?
Yep.
Yeah, I'd heard of Annihilator for years, but I never even came close to checking him out, so it was cool to listen to this. I'm definitely going to check out their other material. They have like a lot of albums, like 17 or 18 albums.
Yeah, their second album's badass too. I think those are the only two I've heard.
Neverland, is that what the second one's called?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to check that one out.
All right, shall we move on to number 3 here?
Do it.
Yet another departure.
Yeah. Yes, this is Communion by Septicflesh, which is, I guess, put in the symphonic death metal camp. They didn't start out that way. So they were, I think they started in the mid-90s as Septicflesh, but the word was not compounded, so they were Septicflesh. And they went to about 2003, and they released Sumerian Demons in 2003, broke up, and then reconvened for this album and restylized their name as a compound word. And they really leaned into some of the more symphonic orchestral stuff. Previously, there were elements of that, obviously, in like their first couple albums, like Ophidian Wheel. But they had much more of like a doom influence on the first album, and then there's also some thrashy parts, more traditional death metal stuff going on. But they really leaned into like the orchestral stuff, and that's just kind of overtaken, increased as their career has moved along. They're from Greece, and I get a really big like Mediterranean mythological vibe when I listen to this, and that's ultimately how I found these guys. So I think it was probably back in 2013, 2012 maybe.
You
were smoking DMT and reading Graham Hancock and listening to Septicflesh.
Reading the Necronomicon and stumbled upon this. I got really into like I wanted to figure out what death metal was, and I think the first band I listened to was actually Flesh God Apocalypse, and then that linked me up to this one because they both have that sort of orchestral quality to it. And I much preferred this. I thought that the Flesh God Apocalypse stuff, except maybe for the first couple albums, just like maybe too compressed in that the arrangements weren't that great. But the orchestra is doing a lot of work on this album, I think. I think this is the highest rated Septicflesh album. I think it's also bolded on Rate Your Music. It's not my favorite, actually. My favorite is probably Titan, which they released in 2014, or The Great Mass, which I think is also bolded. They're both widely regarded in the sort of symphonic death metal genre. But this album is mean, very evil at times, especially the first 3 tracks. So I think is like probably my favorite parts of this album. So the Death of Lovecraft, Anubis, so on. Yeah, great guttural growls, very chuggy, as Anthony pointed out earlier today, which is, I love me some chugginess in metal.
What'd you call it, Anthony? You called it a chug monster?
It's a big chugster.
Big chugster.
A chugster.
This album's a big chugster, and pretty much everything.
It really is.
Pretty much everything Jake likes is a big chugster. So before I even started listening to it, I knew that's what I would be getting.
I think I said this is what deathcore bands, like your garden variety deathcore band, wishes it sounded like. This is very chuggy, but it's it really like it can be complex at times. Great guitar work. I don't know. It's a very big sound. I don't know. I love this stuff, and I guess when I listen to my like extreme metal or death metal, this is the kind of stuff I'm generally looking for.
Yeah, I had a great time with this album, man. This is fun stuff. The harsh vocalist, that dude is brutal as fuck. Holy shit! The really hardcore guttural vocals, those are just crazy brutal. And then, so we were talking about this earlier. The clean vocals really caught me off guard the first time I listened to this. I didn't expect it at all, but I do really like them. I think they're well placed, especially because they're kind of, I don't know, they're kind of fucking weird, man. Like I think I said earlier in our Discord, it sounds like this like ancient pagan kind of like squealing, but it works.
But also Ian Anderson, it's very similar.
Yeah, but also Ian Anderson.
Yeah, that's a nice folk quality to it, which is something I love. I mean, that's something I love about like Blackwater Park and Ghost Reveries. It adds that nice folksy quality to it. And then of course, on the new Wild Run album too, it's very clean vocal heavy on that record. I love me some clean vocals if they're done tastefully and extreme metal. They can work really well, I think.
You know what that clean vocalist actually reminds me of? This just occurred to me. It sort of is Comus.
Ooh.
The
That's a good shout.
pagan imp.
Yeah.
I don't know. The
exactly.
clean vocals on this didn't really stand out as any. I thought that they were kind of bland, really. So I definitely did not hear them at all in the same way that you guys did. I'll have to listen.
Oof.
I've listened.
Yeah, I disagree.
I've listened to this thing.
It's not
twice.
the highlight of the music by any means, I don't think, but it works. I think it works.
Well, and what's actually really interesting, I was watching him on YouTube before we started recording today, and it's a separate guy. All he's doing is those clean vocals.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're pretty sparse.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool gig.
Right? Fuck. You get to wear a long leather jacket and shave your head and wear sunglasses.
So this is a costume band, I think.
Sing pagan
yeah.
shit.
They wear a bunch of trench coats and makeup and stuff. They look evil.
Sing pagan hymns of the ancient Near East.
Yeah. And I actually don't know. So with the orchestral arrangements, I mentioned this when we were talking earlier, James, that on their 2014 release, Titan, they actually had a live orchestra come and play the backtrack, and they released as a bunch of bonus tracks just so these orchestral pieces that they composed, I guess. So they've definitely got I don't know, they're obviously very proficient, but I don't know if this album if it's synthesizers or if it's an actual. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a live orchestra. And I know, as I watched from the video, they have that at live shows when they play this stuff. But that may have been a bit later than when this album was released. So I actually don't know if it was a live orchestra. But that was something that appealed to me as opposed to something like Flesh God Apocalypse, which uses the same. It kind of goes for the same thing. Is that I think that's all of like a computer program playing the orchestral pieces in the background, and it just feels less natural, kind of cheesy in a way. But I think this really aids the music for me. It gives it that really big sound, and definitely gives me that sort of Mediterranean, like Roman, Greek, characteristically, I guess they're a Greek band, but the Greek mythology stuff. I just feel like I'm like listening to one of Homer's epics play out, like battle scenes and things like that. It's really cool.
The orchestration,
it is a full orchestra. I just looked.
The orchestration sounded good, so I'm not surprised it's a full orchestra, because a lot of symphonic metal, in my opinion, sucks. I don't really like the genre very much. Flesh God Apocalypse, I don't like that band. I know a lot of people. I know they have their fans, so I'm not like shitting on them, but I don't like it.
I like them enough. I don't want to talk shit on them.
I don't like that band.
I've never heard them.
A lot of symphonic metal, I'd say the majority, just sounds like regular, somewhat basic extreme metal with like these synthesized like MIDI strings, like just like shoehorned on top of the music in a way that just sounds sounds bad most of the time, honestly, in my opinion. The only symphonic metal that I'd heard that I really think was really good is Emperor, and I mean Emperor is obviously like some of the best extreme metal, so like that's not controversial. But this I thought was really awesome. I do think that the clean vocals were a little bland, but it was nothing that took away from the album. I thought it was great. I thought that the reason why I think that the orchestration worked is because the orchestration was evil, and they weren't like trying to be pretty with the orchestration. No. Like, and that's what a lot of symphonic metal tries to do. Like they like try to like juxtapose like pretty orchestration with evil metal, and it just it doesn't work. Yeah. But the orchestration is evil behind this one.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not this. I encourage you to listen to their later stuff. Yeah, the Great Mass, then Titan, and then Codex Omega, which I really enjoyed. It came out in 2017, I think. I love this band. They're really when I want to listen to some evil shit and I get my death metal fill or whatever. This is what I go to typically.
This meets the evil criteria pretty full
for sure. But I also encourage you guys to go back and check the back catalog too. Just the 90s stuff. You might find some stuff that you prefer. Anthony, I think you might like some of the earlier stuff. Maybe it's bland compared to some of the other death metal stuff you listen to. I don't have a good reference for that. But as I mentioned, there's a lot more like doom influence and even some thrashier parts on that. Sometimes I think the orchestration can be kind of cheesy on the earlier stuff, so that might take away from it. But they're pretty varied, and then they kind of just settled on this sound, and I think they just have improved upon it as time has gone on.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check out the other stuff from both Septicflesh and Annihilator. Yeah, this was really good. Um, most bands who would try to do this, as I've said, I think would have failed, but they succeeded on this one, so I was pretty impressed with it. I was really skeptical going into it because this is probably my least favorite subgenre of extreme metal, but I was really impressed with this.
When I looked at the was it the subgenre for this? So this was like the third rated album on the like symph death metal. And there are a couple others that I listened to. There's some good stuff in this genre, I will say.
I'm sure there
but
is.
You're probably right that
I need to look more
it might
into
be
it.
flooded or inundated with a bunch of like poor acts, maybe. Let's see here. Yeah, so Therion's really good. Some of the Arcturus stuff is great. This album called Koyanis Katsi, From the Yearning to Burst of Perpetual Circles, is like an instrumental symphonic death metal album. Well, I don't even call it death metal, but there's some really good stuff in this genre. But yeah, it might be one of those things where it's really easy to do it poorly and really hard to do it well. It's totally possible.
I do like Arcturus. I guess they kind of are. I mean, Asper Hymn Symphonia, which is a really awesome album, I guess would at least be on the edge of being a symphonic black metal album, even though it is kind of more of just a black metal album.
The Sham Mirrors is the #1 rated symphonic death metal. You may disagree, or symphonic metal, I should say.
The Sham Mirrors I would call like avant-garde metal. Like I guess it's symphonic, but like they're doing a lot of crazy stuff on there. Like that's way more experimental than like the Septicflesh album.
Definitely. Theli is by Therion is a very good album in this genre, which I think is definitely symphonic. Oh, and here you go, number 19, Veil of Imagination by Wild Run. So I definitely have a taste for this stuff. But I don't know. There's a lot of bands in here I'm looking at now I don't recognize. So it could all. Maybe I don't like it. Maybe I just have found some decent ones that I really like.
Yeah, Therion are like kind of the most well-known band in the genre, and I've never heard them, so I should reserve judgment more about the genre.
It's funny, Anthony. I've always shared your prejudice for symphonic extreme metal music, but yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot more to it that I just haven't experienced.
And it's not a monolith either. There's various influences bearing on a lot of these albums. I wouldn't say Arcturus sounds a whole lot like this album, even though they might be in the same sort of subgenre. I don't know what really qualifies you to get into the symphonic, then the sound being kind of big and I don't know. Sounds like it could be played by a symphony orchestra or something like that maybe at parts, but might be kind of a broad criteria for inclusion. So. But it seems to be, it just seems to be a big subgenre, if that's possible. Maybe we could break it down further. I don't know.
I think it works better generally with black metal than with death metal, just due to the nature of black metal. I'm more inclined to listen to symphonic black metal than symphonic death metal. I think that the orchestration typically melds better. But this Septicflesh album was the first symphonic death metal record that I was like pretty thoroughly impressed with, so I'll have to check out more stuff.
Good. Cool. Yeah, glad I could share it. There's I've liked these guys for quite a bit. It's very uncharacteristic for the time that I discovered this band. I kind of went out of my way to find stuff like this. I've kind of been listening to them consistently for almost 10 years now, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd ever heard any Greek metal bands before this. Rotting Christ are probably the most well-known Greek metal band, and I've never listened to that band, so...
Me either.
I was just going to say, I've listened to them before. There's another one I'm thinking of. God damn, what were they called? It was like this Greek power metal band. Fuck. They had a badass guitar player, too.
Sounds awesome.
I gotta figure this out.
Yeah, please find that. Yeah, Anthony, I remember talking about Flesh God Apocalypse in the Discord one time where you were like, I just don't like that band. And I'm like, I totally get that. I can enjoy them. Like Labyrinth, I do like that album. It's really cheesy, but I enjoy listening to that album. But I definitely get where you're coming from. Like, what's it, King? I think one of their later releases doesn't do as much for me.
King.
But I think I mentioned Septicflesh in the same breath. And I was trying to say, like, yeah, these bands are very... in terms of quality, in my opinion, anyway. Divergent.
The band is Firewind.
Oh yeah, I know that band.
Sounds
Yeah,
cool.
Gus G was their guitarist, and he played with a bunch of other bands, including
Nice.
Ozzy, the Prince of Darkness.
Based. The first Flesh God Apocalypse album, Oracles, I like. It's just like a technical death metal album. I think that album's pretty good.
The drummer for Flesh God Apocalypse is insane. He's like not like mentally, just like as a drummer, he's.
I don't know why that was the first way I took that.
I knew I
Damn,
could see it in his face. I was like, I need to
didn't know you knew the
clarify
guy.
what I'm saying here. He's very good at drumming. His
He
blast
belongs
beats
in
are
prison.
unlike anything I've heard. I watched a video of that guy. So Flesh God Apocalypse put out their own wine and pasta, actually, and I watched a video. I think it must have been. I think it was Nuclear Blast Records where I was finding a lot of this stuff.
Not based. Very cringe.
Well, they're Italian. They're Italian, and he's like making pasta with his wine, and it's like the most Italian thing ever. And he's got his drum pad out, and he's like, "I got to be quiet because my son's sleeping." And he's like playing BPM while he's. I don't know. It's really stupid. They seem like they have fun though, so that's one thing I forgive them for. Is they seem like they don't take it super seriously, so I can enjoy some of it. But yeah, Nuclear Blast is a good place to find some music like this.
Talk to some like black metal elitist, and they would cut your head off for speaking positively about Nuclear Blast.
They might actually cut
Yeah,
your head
because
off.
They might cut my head off for no reason.
No, they might actually cut your head off. For
They
no
might be
reason.
neo-Nazis, so they might just not have respect for human life.
Yeah, right. Yes.
All right, let's rank these things.
Yep, I got some statistics if you guys are interested.
Yeah, spit some numbers at us.
You want to do the? Okay, we do this
Let's
first.
do
Cool.
the rankings first. I think we normally do the rankings
Oh,
first.
rankings first. Okay, yeah. Then we'll update maybe we can update the stats
Hey,
with the new rankings.
cool.
I'll go first. 3, 2, 1. Probably. That's fucking hard. Number 1's easy, but 2 and 3 are hard. I'd probably Communion, Alice in Hell, and Survivors is sweet.
This one was easy for me. So 3, 2, 1. It's Alice in Hell, Communion, and then Survivor Suite at number 1 easily, very easily.
Yeah, for me, it's also an easy 3, 2, 1. Annihilator, Septicflesh, and Jarrett.
Another. That's funny. It's our second unanimous number 1, and they're both ECM records. So
That's only the second unanimous number 1?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
pretty positive. Unless 7 was. I actually don't have our rankings. I'll have to wait and see when I listen to that again. That one could have been, but I don't think it was.
What were the albums for that one?
Million Town, I think, was on there.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't unanimous because you and I picked Million Town. Anthony picked the
After Crying record.
Yes, After Crying.
And what was the third album?
Yep. Husker Du.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Arcade.
Husker Du.
Yep. All right, so for some stats here, just a note. So Alice in Hell is a 3.75 on Rate Your Music. So that's.
So I went up again.
Oh yeah, you went up. You definitely went up. It's funny since we haven't done this for a while, so I was
killing it.
looking at. I go back through each of the albums just to make sure it hasn't changed radically, and I'll update it. And some of them have changed. A number of mine have depreciated in rating, which is makes sense because people's music taste gets shittier over time. But no, so yeah, James, you're sitting at a 3.68 average, which is pretty good. Anthony, you're catching up. You're at a 3.63, and I'm holding steady at a 3.55.
What can we do to get Jacob under a 3.5?
I'm just gonna start listening to a bunch of ECM records really fast before Anthony can listen to them, and I'll just start picking those.
We can both rate Dona Nobis Pacem a fucking 0.5 out of 5, and that'll bring that down by, I don't know, 2 full points.
What would be the point? It's already the worst album of our average wise of our. It went down even further. Somebody else listened to that and said, "Nah, this sucks."
Like fucking 20 people on Earth have listened to that album.
I'm really interested. I wish that album was more widely known now because I want to know where that would balance out. Not that I need anyone to validate my opinion. I really like that album.
Maybe Anthony and I are actually total Philistines, and if that album was brought to the attention of the wider prog world, then it would be acclaimed as a masterpiece.
I listened to that album like lying down on the couch with my eyes closed, and it was just a great experience. So I don't know. I can't explain it.
And you were given the breath of life from God.
Yeah, spoke to me. I guess. Yeah.
One of the 20 people who has heard that album is Pope John Paul II.
Apparently, allegedly,
according to the Beard Kid guy.
Yeah, we need to find him, have him on. We can commiserate.
Let's go ahead and not do that.
All right, picks by country. Picks by country. So USA's running away with it. We got 10 for that and 6 for the UK. Those are the only 2 countries with multiple entries. We added Greece and Canada to our collection here, which is nice.
Oh, fuck
insanely based.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Fucking
right.
Let's see. So I think Immunity by John. I keep doing that. John Hopkins. 3 points. It moved up by 1.1. I think it knocked one down, and then the Survivor Suite knocked out the Goat Rodeo Sessions out of the top 5, which is unfortunate. That's an excellent album too. And then Anthony and I are just dominating the top 5 lowest rated albums. It's not good. Donna Nova's Packum and The Flesh Prevails. I'm occupying the bottom 2 spots. Actually, The Way is Red, James. That's you. So that's 3. El Poeta del Ruido is 4, and its album time is number 5.
Oh, its album time is so fucking good. Radio
it's
music.
So good.
Radio music needs to fucking.
I keep coming back to its album time. I listen to that pretty regularly. Actually,
it's pretty good. Yeah, I like it.
What's the Way is
just some
Red?
stuff.
What's that?
That's the Staves. It's that.
Yeah.
Those 3 girls that do the music with that chamber group.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It was a good one. Yeah, definitely another underrated one in my opinion.
Oh, I love that stuff, man.
Yeah. Let's see here. So yeah, James, your average year is 1994. Seems like you really like the 80s and 90s.
I do.
Yeah, your median is 1991. Anthony, you're also chilling in 1996 with a median in 1998. But you got a lot more from the 2000s. You've just picked some like really early ones, like 1977, 1980, 1981. And then I'm at 2000 for my average, with the median of 2003. And then our average year is 1997, same with the median. So we're chilling right around the turn of the century.
Is the Survivor Suite the only one from the 70s that we've done?
No, we did that album from the what were they called? Decibel.
That was from the 80s, actually.
That's from the 70s. Oh, that's 80s?
Well, we couldn't decide if it was 79 or 80 or 81.
Yeah, it's actually unclear exactly what year it came out.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's got some kind of like extreme, like in terms of dates, he's got like his range is larger than ours.
And what about countries?
So I think Anthony's still got the country tally. You're certainly the least diverse, James, on picking countries.
Yeah, I'm in the Anglosphere. I don't like other languages.
Oh god. Yeah, Anthony's got some interesting ones. He got like Hungary, Mexico, some cool stuff in there. Norway, and then I've got I believe Greece, the Netherlands, of course, and Germany. Anthony also has Poland under his belt with the Believe record.
Are those all the countries that we've covered that you just named? Did you name them all?
Yep, USA, UK, Germany, Mexico, Netherlands, Poland, Norway, Hungary, Greece, and Canada. We need to get out of Europe and the United States.
I agree.
I've got some stuff for that.
Oh, I do too, actually. I just thought of one I'll bring out for the next one.
Yeah, I have some ideas.
Although I don't know if I want to leave the Anglosphere. I know I got to have some more Canadian shit you guys haven't heard.
Probably.
Would James...
You're going to pick...
Would LaBrie's solo albums count as Canadian?
Sure.
You're going to pick a Skid Row album, but I cock-blocked you on that.
Yeah, I fucking tried. You cock-blocked me, man.
I watched Trailer Park Boys. I don't know what to say.
Wail on our asses.
I don't know what to say. I looked up everything about Sebastian Bach after the episodes.
Dude, he's hilarious on Trailer Park Boys, too.
Dude, he's great.
Skid Row is Canadian?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, at least Sebastian Bach is. I don't know about the rest of them. Alrighty. Well, I think that wraps up Raw Beef number 8.
Nice.
Think so. Coming up on that number 10, we'll do a retrospective after that, I think.
We have to style it like retrospective in Kobaian.
Oh, retrospect you.
Yes.
Alright, don't you fucking close your browser.